So HNTB and the project team is pleased to provide this presentation overview of an update for the preliminary design for the Northwest BRT project. If you can go to the next slide, so I'll provide an overview. So as you know, the Northwest BRT will connect the northwest area of Oklahoma City along the Northwest Expressway in Classen and connect to downtown. Northwest BRT project, like many other BRT projects, the intent is to provide a fast and efficient service. And like other BRT projects, essentially what is a BRT project? At the core of the project, it really, BRT operates in a rail-like manner. So as we go over the station locations, one of the things you'll notice is it does have limited stops. It also has frequent headways, so the service comes quicker than the traditional bus service. And then it also has more rail-like stations, so level boarding. That's one of the things you'll see with the stations that we provide, and also enhanced amenities as part of this. So we're going to go over kind of the core parts of what's included as part of the project, but just keep in mind that those are kind of the core principles that differentiate BRT from traditional bus service. The other thing that we'll provide an overview is the pedestrian and bicycle considerations, which are an important component of the project. I'll briefly highlight that, but you'll notice when Marcus discussed the station locations, especially at a couple of the key intersections, he'll talk about some of those considerations and the coordination that we're doing from both a pedestrian and a bicycle standpoint. We'll also go over stations and guideway improvements, park and ride, high-level budget, and next steps. So basically what to define as part of 30% design. So essentially, preliminary design allows us to provide a sufficient detail to start the property coordination and also the utility coordination. So also coordinated with that are a number of pedestrian and bicycle improvements on both Classen and the Northwest Expressway, because the Northwest BRT provides limited stops. The pedestrian bicycle connections are really important. They're really critical as part of this project. So there is a number of bicycle and pedestrian coordination that is going on with the project, in particular the bicycle lane coordination and the future considerations of bicycle connections along Classen and connecting to the corridor. So Marcus will discuss some of those when we talk about the specific station locations. In terms of the core part of the project, the other key component is technology. So it will include transit signal priority, which essentially makes the service faster and more efficient. So we can get either elongated green times or early greens as part of the system. So that's a key part of that. Guideway improvements, which Marcus will talk about, and essentially those are just ways of making the BRT operate more efficiently. There's a couple of choke points along Classen and the Northwest Expressway, and really those guideway improvements or geometric improvements really help us make the system more efficient. Frequent service, the service would come approximately every 12 to 15 minutes in the peak period. Vehicles, low emission CNG vehicles, especially branded vehicles. And one of the things we'll also note is, similar to the OKC streetcar, they'll have elevated platforms, which is really critical because not only does it have faster and more efficient boarding and alighting times, which are critical to make the service more efficient, which is a key part of the service, but it also is important just from an ADA accessibility standpoint. It makes it a more comfortable environment for getting on and off the vehicle, just as it does with the streetcar. The corridor is approximately 9.5 miles one way and includes 32 stops and 2 park and rides. And the overall project cost is approximately $28.8 million. And this would include vehicles, and it does also include the local match part of the project, which includes a lot of those pedestrian enhancements and connections. But when we talk about it at the end, Marcus is going to provide a high-level budget, and really that's just for the station locations and the guideway improvements as part of the core part of the project. So in terms of the typical station layout, it looks very similar, as you can see, from the OKC streetcar in terms of that elevated raised board platform, which provides that level boarding, so you can basically get on and off the vehicle efficiently. It includes a ticket vending machine for off-board fare collection, and this does make boarding and alighting more efficient as well. It does include handrails, obviously, because it's elevated, and it does include those ramps, obviously, because we have an elevated platform. And it does include a pylon, which will be branded, with real-time arrival and wayfinding. And then also lighting is an important consideration for this as well, especially along portions of Class in the Northwest Expressway where there isn't a lot of lighting, especially at the pedestrian and bicycle level. It's very important that we illuminate the platform as well as other amenities as part of the system. So Marcus is going to talk about the route and stop locations, and it's kind of go quickly through those, and then again, when we get to the end, if we have any questions, we could always go back to one of those.
Thanks, Brian. So like Brian said, there's 32 stations, so we'll try to get through these pretty quickly. Generally, you can see there on the map, the route will start, the way that we'll walk through everything kind of starts downtown. We'll start Broadway and Main, and we'll work our way clear out north to Northwest Expressway and Meridian. The route generally follows from Broadway and Main to over to Robinson, Robinson up to 4th, and then 4th, it basically goes by the transit center, up to Hudson to 10th, and then generally you'll follow Classen all the way to Northwest Expressway, and then west on Northwest Expressway, and you'll see there's 2 jogs that kind of jump off of Northwest Expressway to some key attractions to get ridership. And then you end at the Aquit property, the Water Trust property there at Northwest Expressway and Meridian. So we'll jump right in. So here we're at Broadway and Main. Again, the bus will be traveling, just so I guess everybody's orientated correctly, right is north on the map. And then you'll take key note, kind of on the right-hand side is the first map, but it has the yellow dot. So as we go through these, you can kind of see where we're at along the route there. So the station will actually be in the existing street parking, where the street car parking is, or I guess cars that park on the street. And the bus will stop in the through lane for a quick load and unload. From here, we can go to the next slide. It'll go west on Main and then north on Robinson. Again, the station will be located in the street or in where the cars park today. And again, the bus will stop for a quick load and unload here. As we continue north, we'll go up to 4th and head west. Here, you'll see both the inbound and the outbound station are at the transit center. So reconstructing a portion of this underneath the existing canopy to where it has the raised platform that Brian talked about. So you'll see the outbound actually goes through the intersection at 4th and Hudson and heads west. Hangs a right to go into the transit center to get to on the right side of the platform. And then they go back out on 4th and head north on Hudson. The inbound station to downtown is a lot simpler. It just comes down Hudson, slides to the right, pulls up to the platform, and then loads, unloads, and then carries on with their route. Same amenities at that location, it's just they're a little bit different because of the canopy that's there and the columns and stuff that we're working around. As we continue north on Hudson, just south of 8th, this station here is right in front of Elemental Coffee. Again, the station is located in the existing street parking. Still a standard station here. So as we continue now, next slide, and go north and turn west on 10th, this is right out in front of St. Anthony Hospital. There's an existing mid-block crossing here. You can see just to the right, just to the east of our stations. So both inbound and outbound are directly across the street from one another. So if we continue on to Classen, and this is where Brian talked about kind of we're sandwiched between 2 other bike lane projects on Classen. So there's a project that comes up to 10th that has the bike lanes, and a project that goes from north of 16th that has the bike lane. So we're kind of right in the middle, coordinating with both of those. The outside lane of Classen today is very underutilized from a traffic standpoint. And so that outside lane is being converted to a bike lane. So a 6-foot bike lane and a 3-foot buffer from the traveling public. So the stations here, I guess the stuff in pink that you see on the far left is actually stuff that's being constructed or designed by the On-Q development that's going kind of on the kind of upper left there, the west side of that intersection. The closing of that slip lane, that's all part of it, and so we're just coordinating with them to make sure our improvements tie in with everything they've got planned there. You will see it with the bike lanes here, very similar to the streetcar at 4th and Robinson, where the bike lane goes back behind the streetcar or behind the bus platform. So a very similar approach there. So we're not having the bike lane and the bus conflict point. So as we continue north here between 17th and 18th at Classen, still 2 standard stations. The one on outbound is right there by Homeland, and then the inbound station is there kind of in the island or the pork chop there. Both have improvements to get you back to 18th to the signalized intersection. So as we continue to 23rd, 23rd is a little unique because with the traditional bus that crosses on 23rd and Classen here, we anticipate a high ridership at these 2 locations because of the 2 routes joining. And so one thing that's a little bit different about our stations here is that the station will actually have 2 benches. It'll be an extra long shelter for just anticipated more folks using it. And then it'll also have 2 ADA kind of staging areas under the shelter as well. And you can see there, and you'll see on all of these the improvements at the intersection, whether they're ADA curb ramps, whether it's new striping across the roads. In this case, one of the intersections isn't ADA compliant, so really focusing on getting folks from the station back to the intersection in an all ADA compliant manner. So as we continue on to 30th and Classen, both of these are on the south side of 30th. They're both standard stations here. We can keep going to 36th now. 36, very similar. These are on far side stations, both inbound and outbound, and both standard stations here as well. 42nd has a couple of unique things about it. If you're familiar, in the northwest quadrant here of 42nd and Classen is New View, assisting with visually impaired individuals. And so we really want to make sure that we've got a clear crossing path for those that are using this facility to get to New View. And so understanding that, using a mid-block crossing that you see just to the north or just to the right on the map of the actual stations, there'll be traditional signals there to stop traffic so that everybody can cross in a safe manner. There is a significant slope there on the west side of this inbound station or southbound here, and that's the red line you see will be a retaining wall. So there's only a couple of those on the project. So we'll continue now. We have gone north now to Northwest Expressway, and we're making our turn now back west. There's a few unique things that we'll talk here in a minute about that turn. But once we get west here, Blackwelder is just off the screen to the left here. And so this is the inbound station. And what you see here is basically a bus pull-off where the bus can actually merge out of Northwest Expressway traffic, stop, load, unload, and then have enough distance to get up to speed and make a safe merge back into the existing traffic. So we go to the next one. So the outbound station here, very similar here. Go past the intersection. You can see the intersection improvements here at Northwest and Blackwelder. And then again, a spot for them to pull off out of traffic and then load, unload, and get back up to speed to merge in safely. So Northwest in Pennsylvania, right outside of Penn Square Mall here. Again, a unique, interesting thing here is the city does have planned to add a through lane here on Northwest. So we want to make sure that we're building the stations in a position where in 3 to 5 years when that lane is built, we're not having to come in and move those stations out another 12 feet. So that you'll see it's actually built out a little bit farther than what it could be if we built it without that consideration. The bus will again has a little bit shorter area here to get out of the travel way and get back in to make their movements there. Sorry if you can go back there. One key note here is you'll see a kind of a significant sidewalk infrastructure being proposed here. This is one of the key locations that we talked about for having a potential park and ride. So coordination is still underway with the Penn Square Mall about kind of in that southwest quadrant of the mall parking there. Next slide. So this is just opposite the kind of the southwest quadrant of Northwest and Penn. Similar situation, so making sure that we're setting the station up for the future development here. There is a right turn lane that's being proposed here. So making sure that station's set appropriately from an offset standpoint. As we continue now down Northwest, we've now made a left onto Independence, going south on Independence here, right out front of Integris Hospital. Again, they have a mid-block crossing with flashing beacons out there today. So leveraging the mid-block crossing that's there. You'll see again the retaining wall that's on the east side of Independence because of that slope that does go down pretty drastically to the parking lot. Again, just both standard stations here. So as we continue on now, down 56 before we turn on Portland here, both standard stations just east of Portland here on 56th and the intersection improvements that go with it. Going north now on to up to northwest on Portland, the inbound station is just south of Northwest Expressway here. There's a lot of utilities that are just on that kind of southwest quadrant of the intersection. You can see the sidewalk kind of has to wiggle its way through there to avoid a lot of those utilities. So it did push the station just a bit to the south across 62nd there. As we continue now, we've turned back west now on Northwest. Again, a location here where the bus is going to be able to pull off of Northwest Expressway, pull over, load and unload riders, and then get back into traffic. So now we've gone to Northwest Expressway and turned and went west on 63rd. Both of these stations here, as you can see, they tie directly into the existing trail system. And so riders can be able to use the trails and be able to use the bike racks or bikes on the bus. Both standard stations there. The last one is another one that has some unique aspects here. So we're still under coordination here with exactly where this station is going to be exactly because of coordinating with the Water Trust developer here. And they have some plans to put in a roundabout and a bunch of mixed-use retail development. So still working with exactly where this is going to be, but generally where you see it is kind of where the station will be. Again, this is a high ridership because of an anticipated end of the line, unload, and everybody loading back on. Working with the development and the existing parking lot there to another potential park and ride location. So this again will have 2 benches, a longer shelter, and then 2 ADA staging areas underneath the shelter. So with that, we'll kind of rewind back to how we're making that turn from Classen to Northwest. So today out there on the right-hand lane, there's actually a decision lane where you can go to make the right in advance, or you can go straight through the intersection. Looking at that intersection, the right lane again continues to be underutilized. And so the bus is actually when the bus leaves 42nd and Classen at that station, they're going to stay in the right lane and continue north here then and pull into this kind of bus-only area. It'll be signed and striped accordingly. The bus will actually then get a dedicated left turn phase. So similar, a lot of the streetcar intersections where it's turning left, it's got its own transit signal phase where it's turning left across all the traffic. Everybody else is stopped. So just kind of a unique transit area there. So back to Penn and Northwest Expressway. So this, because of how the configuration is with the future lane, the bus isn't going to be able to get from that fully wide outside area where the station is all the way into the left lane with that short a distance with oncoming traffic. So here the bus will actually have a Q lane jump. So it'll actually be in the right turn lanes on both sides, and it'll actually get its own signal to go across the intersection, and when it goes across the intersection, it'll have one lane to merge over until the future improvements come along. So real quick and at a high level here, just kind of go through where we're at from an engineer's estimate. Right now, I mean, everybody's eyes gravitate towards the bottom to see what the number is, and so 18.8 million is roughly where we sit. Again, that includes a pretty healthy contingency because, like Brian said, we're only at 30%. We have a lot of unknowns with some utilities. And so we've had a fairly conservative utility estimate in there. We currently are out potholing to figure out where some of these utilities are and how deep are they under the station locations to figure out do we have to move them or can we build the station on top of them. The left there kind of shows you a general idea of the elements that are included with the general categories. So you can see the biggest, and no surprise, the biggest ticket item is the actual station. So the platforms, the shelters, all of the amenities that go with it. And like Brian mentioned earlier, this does not include, this is just physical infrastructure. This doesn't include the buses and the local match projects. So with that, I'll let Brian kind of walk you through the park and ride locations.
Thank you, Marcus. So Marcus kind of highlighted two potential park and ride locations, the one at the end of the line at the Water Trust property. And then the other one, there's discussions and ongoing kind of coordination with Penn Square Mall, and also the Oak development may have some interest as well. So I think those discussions are kind of early on, and those are kind of guide some of the future improvements and connections, especially those pedestrian connections, to make sure that it's efficient in terms of getting to the service. And then also what would be included as part of our project would be that dedicated striping and signage for the park and ride customers, so that would be part of the coordination as well that's going to go on. So right now within 30%, we have identified kind of the preliminary locations, and then in final design, we'll start those discussions with the property owners, not just the park and ride locations, but within the other locations as well. And in terms of the schedule, so last year we were working on preliminary design, which is approximately at a 30% level. And then also kicking off, which are the immediate next steps I'll talk about here in a couple of minutes, is the branding and the vehicles. But final design will take place in 21 and 22, and that's a long time period. And one of the significant components of that is obviously the engineering can go pretty quickly, but it's the property and utility coordination that will take a lot of time. If you could also think about this 9.5-mile corridor with a lot of different infrastructure, coordinating a lot of different projects. So both on the property side in terms of the coordination, but also the utility coordination and all of those projects will take some time to make sure that we have all of those coordinated and all of those projects are coming together. So the final design will run through 22, through the early part of 22, and then construction will take place, and it'll take approximately a year, and it'll run to about mid 2023. And one of the lessons learned that we've seen with other BRT projects is really we'd like to have the construction finished by mid 2023 for an opening potentially in the fall of 2023. But that leaves ample time for testing and working out the kinks with the transit signal priority and that sort of thing. And that's one of the things we've seen, obviously, on streetcar and other BRT projects. It's very important, especially with those low-level boarding platforms and making sure that the drivers are kind of understanding, the how to pull in and pull out, and to do that testing and coordination is very important as well. But the immediate next steps, obviously, are branding and is an important consideration. As you've seen in that preliminary rendering that we have of the pylons and the infrastructure, it does not include branding yet. That's currently just kicked off in December. One of the things I will note about the branding and the process is it's very important for a BRT because it helps differentiate the service. So it's more than just a name or a logo as part of the service. It actually needs to convey the entire brand, and it also needs to be reflective, obviously, of Oklahoma City. And one of the things that has been discussed as part of that, obviously, there will be other future BRT corridors, so that also needs to be under consideration. Even though this is the Northwest BRT, BRT will be an overall brand for Oklahoma City that will be rolled out in multiple corridors, just a streetcar. So it really kicked off, but there will be an advisory committee that will be a part of this, and there'll be a process as part of this as well. And really, I think we're on target for a brand selection in the spring of 2021, but this is an important part of the consideration of the project as well. And the vehicles will be low-emission CNG vehicles. Both doors will include for boarding and alighting, and it will also be reflective of the BRT brand. So there'll be specially branded BRT vehicles that will be part of this. I do note vehicles, it wasn't included within the cost, but one of the things I will note is we do need early coordination on the vehicles because typically there's a long lead time in ordering vehicles, as you know. It's typically 18 to 24 months. So that process will also start along with the branding early this year in terms of that procurement process. So with that, I'll go